I've got something a little bit different planned for today, and that's for two reasons. One, we have a lot of new people on the channel, and two, I want to see what we've accomplished this year. This was an absolutely wild year this year. We went through a major transition homestead wise, and it was completely unexpected. For anyone that's tuned into our channel before, you know that we did not live at this property last year. We moved to this property last year. So all kinds of things have changed since then. I thought it would be a cool idea to go through everything we've done this year and do a video on 1 year of homesteading. So I think it's time to start from the absolute very beginning of last year. Last year, one of our first videos that we posted was a homestead tour. And we went around our entire homestead that we used to live at and gave you a tour on everything we had over there. So we went through our pigs, we went through our chickens, our ducks, our goats, we went through our garden space, and I think we even touched on the bees. And during that video, I believe we had all of our animals in one spot. And our plan last year was to have separate individual areas for each of the animals that we have. So we wanted to move our goats, we wanted to move our pigs, and we wanted to keep our chickens and ducks separate. We wanted everybody to have their own space. We also talked about expanding our garden and adding electric fence, which we did end up doing. Well, the electric fence we added, but we did not expand our garden. We also touched on our bees. So last year we had 1 hive, and this year we ended the season with 3 hives. So a lot of things changed on our homestead last year. But the biggest change of all was that we actually sold our homestead after doing all that work and moved where we are now to a place that had absolutely zero development on the property at all. We had a house, of course, but we had no fencing, we had no animal structures, we had 0 gardens, we had absolutely nothing. In fact, the area that I'm standing on right now hadn't been cut in years. And I'm not kidding when I say the grass or whatever was growing here before was literally almost as tall as me. And there was garbage upon garbage upon garbage. After we took everybody on a tour of our homestead, one of the next videos we posted was doing maple syrup. So there was a series of videos that went along with doing syrup, because syrup is not just a one-day event. It's tapping trees, it's putting your buckets out, it's collecting the sap, it's boiling it, it's processing it. It's a whole event in its own. So last year we tapped, I think, 20 trees, and that was an increase from the year before, because the year before we only did, I think, 12 or 15 trees. So last year we upped it to 20, and we were incredibly happy with how our syrup turned out. We had amazing color on our syrup last year, and we also upgraded our evaporating system to a huge stainless steel pan that we got with a little faucet on the top. And let me tell you, that was life-changing when it came to boiling. The first season that we did syrup, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. Last year, we had a better grasp on the whole process that went with syrup. And this year, we've tapped 40 trees. I am so looking forward to syrup season this year because I can't wait to see how much syrup we end up with. And I'm gonna be using some of that syrup to make a few things this year that we've never made before. One being maple sugar. So stay tuned for a video on that because I will definitely be showing you how to make maple sugar. After maple syrup, we decided that we were going to move our pigs to a new area and we were going to install some electric fencing around our garden, which we did, and it was amazing. Moving the pigs was quite a task, and if you watch that video, you will see that they did not go easily. Our pigs to their own area is because we did not want everybody all together anymore. It was also becoming a problem for using the bedding as compost. I personally do not want to use pig manure as compost, and I am no expert when it comes to composting your garden, but for me personally, I just didn't want to use pig manure. So I wanted to separate the pigs, one being the manure, but also they needed their own space, especially when Emma is birthing. Her birthing in with the chickens, it never worked because the goats were in there and she just didn't have her own privacy. So moving the pigs was a priority for us last season. In the same video, we added electric fencing around our garden. One of the main reasons for adding electric fencing around our garden was because the dogs kept running through it. And we had raccoons go in there and take all of our corn. And I'm not kidding when I say all of our corn because we literally had 0 corn at the end of that season. The raccoons came in when we were camping and took down every single cob of corn that we had. And in the time that we were camping, the pigs got out of their fence, went into the potato patch and dug up every single potato that we had, and we had 0 potatoes at the end of the year. So we lost our corn and we lost our potatoes, which is why we added the electric fence and also moved the pigs into an area with better fencing. After we moved our pigs and put up our electric fencing, the next thing that we wanted to get done was moving our goats. So we moved our goats to a completely separate area. We got a new structure. Well, new to us structure. We actually ended up getting the structure for free. Somebody that we knew was getting rid of this little hut thing that they had, and we took it all down, brought it home, and then set it up again, and that was our goat hut. So our goat hut cost us $0, which was amazing. After we put up the goat hut, we put electric fencing around the whole thing, and we moved our goats in, which if you watch that video, did not go well moving the goats. In fact, he ran right through the electric fence, took a shock on the nose, and kept going. Finally, we got the goats all sorted, and they were used to being in the spot that they were in. And they did stay in that area for the most part. For some reason, once we moved here and put up the electric fence, they did not respect it at all. And we actually had to go take down everything that we did and put up this fence, which has been working amazing. One of our goals for this year was growing out our own meat birds and turkeys and processing our own meat. We stopped buying beef from the store a few years ago, and this was the year that we wanted to stop buying chicken and turkey. And we did that. Jeff ended up building a chicken tractor for our chickens, which worked perfectly for our chickens and our turkeys. The thing that we noticed though with putting the turkeys in there was that they were a little big. Turkeys get big. I didn't realize how big a turkey actually got because I've never done turkeys before. But after they were processed and dressed, we were looking at between 14 and 20 to 22 pounds, which was absolutely crazy because trying to process those things by myself, it didn't go well. Doing the meat birds this year was one of my favorite things that we added to our homestead. It is an incredible feeling knowing where your food came from, how it was treated, how it was raised, and the life that it had. Our chickens got sunshine, bugs, grass, and they got treated nicely. So I mean, what more can you ask for when it comes to the food that you're putting in your body? Processing the meat birds was something that was completely new to us because we'd never done it before. Yes, we've culled a few chickens or roosters when it's been necessary to do so, but we've never done a full-on processing operation. So we were brand new to that experience. And the first video that we posted on processing our chickens, that was our learning experience. The second video we posted later in the season with our second round of meat birds, we included the kids in that. We also added an automatic plucker, which was an absolute game changer. I would never process chickens again without the automatic plucker. It just won't happen because that thing saves so much time. It was amazing. The downfall is you can't put your turkeys in that. And I did try and throw one in there and it did not go well. Including the kids in the second round of processing chickens was really cool because Bailey ran the automatic plucker almost the entire time that we processed those chickens. Mason would go into the chicken tractor, pull the chicken out and bring it to Jeff. Jeff would cull it, bring it over to Bailey. Bailey would pluck it, and then I would break down the chicken. I'm already looking forward to processing chickens this year because now that we've done 2 rounds of them, we know what to expect. We know what the problems were that we had. We've learned from the problems, and we had a really good system going when we had the kids involved. By this point in the year last year, it was time to start splitting wood. Well, in fact, we should have been splitting wood long before that, but this was the time that we started. At that point, we already had an offer on the place that we're at right now, so we already knew that we needed to start splitting wood. The house that we're in now is 122 years old with original windows and doors and absolutely zero insulation. We had anticipated that this winter was going to be a cold one, so we went ahead and stacked 6 bush cords of wood. At our old house, we burned 3 bush cords of wood, and that was enough to get us through the entire winter with a little bit left over. However, our other house was new, insulated, it had new windows and doors, and it was very efficient. This house, while it looks lovely on the inside and has tons of character, it definitely has zero ability to hold heat. Yesterday, we were out during the day because one of the kids had sports, so nobody was here to fill the fire during the day, and when we got home, it was 48 degrees Fahrenheit in the house. I think that works out to around 9 degrees Celsius or something like that. So the 6 cords that we put up, unfortunately, is not going to be enough, so we'll have to figure that out, and we'll have to figure it out very soon. Shortly after starting to split our wood, we announced to the channel that we had sold our homestead. And there was a lot of questions on why we sold it if we had just done all this work. We'd now moved our goats, we moved our pigs, we'd set up electric fencing, and we had already planned to expand our garden. So we had done all that work only to just up and move. And the kicker to the whole thing was the people that bought the house did not want anything to do with homesteading. So we had to take down everything that we had just put up and move all the animals, move all the structures, and put up all new fencing. And what a task that was. We had to move the whole contents of the house, plus move the whole farm, all in the matter of a week. And it was one of the most stressful weeks of my life. Thankfully, we had a ton of help. My dad and my brothers came down to help us. My dad has a skid steer, thankfully, which made moving the coops a lot easier because he just hooked a chain up to the bucket and then drug the coops and the goat hut all the way to the front, and we loaded them onto a trailer. So CAA came by, loaded up our structures, and drove them over to the new house. And while CAA was moving our structures, my brother had his truck and trailer up here, and he took all the goats, the pigs, the chickens, and the ducks in his trailer. We took a couple goats in the back of my truck, and then we had the trailer on my truck, which had the turkeys in it. Somehow we managed to take down our entire homestead and move it in 8 hours. So have a look back at that video to watch the whole thing start to finish, because it was an absolutely wild day. Like I mentioned before, this property had absolutely zero development done on it. Field hadn't been cut in years. There were rocks everywhere. There was garbage everywhere. And mind you, there still is garbage everywhere. That'll be in a later video to discuss that whole thing, because I could talk about that forever. So in between working, we had to come here and set up all new fencing. And we thought this was the perfect time to have the ideal setup that we've always wanted. So we started right from the beginning, and we added a separate pig pen, a separate pen for the chickens and ducks, and a separate pen for the goats. And I'm so happy that we ended up taking down the electric fence after we set it up and put up this wood fence and now have a gate to access the goats. In the midst of all this buying and selling properties, putting up new fencing, taking down old fencing, moving the chickens and moving the animals and doing all this other stuff, I still had a garden that I had to maintain at the other house. I started planning for our garden for the following season in January. So my plan for the garden last year was made long before we knew we were going to be moving. All of the things I had planned, obviously we didn't execute because it would have been more gardens that needed to be added, extra raised beds and things like that. So we didn't bother wasting time building all that stuff only to have to take it all down and then move it all. At this point in the year, we've now moved to the new house. The animals are moved in. We've harvested what we could out of the garden. We've split our firewood and we are getting ready for winter. The only thing is, this house did not have a wood stove when we moved in. It only had a propane furnace. So one of the first things we did within, I think, 2 weeks of being here was rip out a wall. So we ripped the wall out to make space for this wood stove, and we are so glad that we did. It has been brisk inside, even with the wood stove going. I think our house temperature averages between 10 and maybe 14 degrees Celsius. I think it's gotten up to about 16 degrees Celsius, but that's only if the sun's shining. At this point in the year, we are getting ready for fall. It's getting cold outside. We have absolutely zero gardens on this property, and it's time to start planting garlic. We went out and rented a sod cutter, cut a huge area for the garden, planted 585 cloves of garlic, covered it all up for the winter. We got a huge dumping of rain, and that's when I noticed that my garlic was underwater. Obviously, we weren't here last year, so we had no idea where the water went to or how this property really functioned. We thought the best spot for the garlic was where we put it. And now we're at a point where we're probably gonna have to dig a pond this year to divert some of the water because of all the low spots. I'm still crossing my fingers though that the garlic grows, because this will be the biggest year for garlic that we've ever had. Last year we planted 85 cloves of garlic, and that was my first time being successful planting garlic. It's never worked out for me before because our old house was so wet that actually the back part of our property was environmentally protected and it was super swampy. So when it rained, water pooled very easily and it drowned out my garlic, my onions, and my potatoes the first year that we ever planted them. So having 85 heads of garlic last year was absolutely amazing. And we went from 85 to 585 this year. After we got our garlic into the ground, the next video that we made was showing you what our chores look like here. I've mentioned before in a few other videos that we had no outdoor water here. That was something we overlooked when we initially came and looked at this property before putting an offer on it. Thankfully, Jeff was able to hook up a faucet outside within the first week of being here. This year we plan on digging a trench and running water from the house out to where the animals are, especially now that we have this cow in the background, because she's going to be needing a whole lot of water next year. At this point, it's now November, and I took you on a tour of our pantry. At the old house, we had a pantry in our basement, and Jeff had built some shelves down there and had made them the appropriate height to fit all my different sizes of mason jars in them. I loved having... That never gets old. Having the pantry in the basement at the old house was amazing because everything was right where I needed it, and it was in a cool, dark place. This year we don't have a basement to put our pantry in, so I have our pantry set up in the kitchen right now. Or, well, what should be the kitchen but isn't really a kitchen. And to answer the questions on that, you can watch our house tour video and see what I'm talking about. Right now we have shelves set up in the kitchen. I love having everything accessible and not having to run downstairs every time I need something. The only issue is the stuff that I've canned, it really should be in a cool, dark place, and it shouldn't be in the kitchen where there's a window. We shouldn't be having light shining right on the jars. And that's another thing that's on our list for this year is once the basement's all fixed up, that is where our pantry is going to be. One of the other crazy things we did last year was get a cow, which I know might not seem that crazy to some people. A cow has been a part of my dream for this homestead for a long time. And I would tell anyone who would listen about how one day I'm gonna get a cow, I'm gonna use it for milk, and I'm gonna eliminate dairy from the grocery store. And finally the time has come. Sometimes I come outside and I hear her mooing, and I really can't believe that we have a cow. That was one of the most exciting things that we added to our homestead last year. And another wild thing to me is there are things that you want for your homestead and you continue to say it out loud. I'm telling you, it's gonna happen. Because here we are with this homestead and this cow that I said that we are definitely making happen, and it did happen. Take a look back at our video on bringing home the cow, because the kids had absolutely no idea that we were bringing this cow home, and they were completely shocked. We also had no way to bring the cow home, so we did bring the cow home in the backseat of my truck, which was an interesting ride home because she did poop and pee back there a few times, and it was quite a mess. But I'm so glad we have this cow, and I cannot wait for her to be at an age where she's able to be bred and then supply us with dairy. It's gonna be absolutely amazing. I can't wait for that. Making my own cheese, butter, cream, buttermilk, yogurt. Well, I already make my own yogurt, but using raw milk to make my own yogurt. I'm just so looking forward to that. I cannot wait. There were so many changes last year. Our homestead went through such a revamp and such a complete overhaul. It's still crazy to think about now, because last year at this time, all I was expecting was that we were going to move our animals to separate areas and that we were going to add a couple new gardens. That was the homestead goals last year. I am blown away with how the year actually turned out. It's still crazy to me to think that you just have no idea what's going to happen. I'm standing here right now telling you about what the goals are for the homestead this year, but who knows what it's actually gonna be. It could be way more than I'm even saying right now, which is wild to think about. We got the cow, all of the animals are in their own separate space, even better than what we had hoped for. Our garden is about to become exponentially larger. Well, it already is, because we have 5 times the amount of garlic planted, and we haven't even scratched the surface on gardening yet this year. So all the stuff that I had hoped for got accomplished, and then some. In the midst of all the things that we accomplished last year on our homestead, we still managed to squeak in a little bit of time to go camping and do a few things outdoors that we enjoy doing. Normally in the summer, we would have spent way more time camping and doing that kind of stuff, but this year, everything changed. So we didn't really have that much time to go camping, but we still managed to squeeze in a few trips, which is important because as much work as homesteading is, we still need to carve out some time to do the things that we enjoy doing outside of here. I know I've said it before and I'll say it again, but if this is the life that you want to have and you are considering homesteading, you don't know where to begin, and you're overwhelmed with the amount of work that you think it might be, I really urge you to sit down and write out exactly what it is that you want for yourself. And give yourself a timeline. I still do that every year. In December, usually around New Year's Eve, I will sit down, I'll write out my goals for our homestead for the year, and then I'll break it down month by month. It's easier for me to tackle goals if I have them broken down by month, because each month I only have to do a couple little things, which in the end brings me to my overall goal for the year. Doing a few small goals makes it seem a lot more attainable to getting to the end of where we want to be. Don't be discouraged if you don't know where to start. Pick something small. Maybe this year you want to learn how to plant a tomato. Perfect. That's your goal for this year. Write that down and make it happen. Spend the time before gardening season looking up how to plant tomatoes. What kind of fertilizer do they need? Where do they need to be positioned, in the sun or in the shade? Make the time for the things that you want to do. I'm telling you, it is totally worth it. So that's it. That's a whole year of homesteading crammed down into one video. You can see where we started and you can see where we ended up. Significant changes and some improvements. And I really can't wait to see what this year brings for us. We continue to add things, we continue to make changes, and we really just continue to grow here. I'm excited to see how our garden turns out this year. I'm excited to see what happens with our cow. I'm really just looking forward to everything that this year is gonna bring. And please let me know in the comments what kind of videos you wanna see next. I'm getting a lot of messages on Instagram about if I can post videos on how to make soap or how to make bread. Let me know what it is that you want to learn and I will try and show you how to do it. That's it for today though. Hope you enjoyed the video and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.